Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
All right, happy Thursday to you. Thanks for tuning in, whether it's on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Today is Sine Die Day here in the Georgia Capitol. That means legislators can be working up until midnight, sometimes even beyond that, to get all the legislation done for their calendar year. Sarah Callis at Georgia Public Broadcasting gives us a summation of what the Georgia Senate was actually doing yesterday to get in position, prepared to clear the slate so that they can actually get even more done today. Here's what they accomplished yesterday.
Most notable from the morning session was HB 916, the Senate's version of the fiscal year 2025 budget, which goes into effect July 1st.
This is Senator Blake Tillery.
$36.08 billion, and it's about 4.3% under our FY 2023 collections, with tax receipts projected to be about 3.9% under those as well.
Besides the publicized raises for teachers and state employees, the Senate version also targeted other agencies.
Above those pay increases, the Senate also targeted specific areas. Law enforcement, $3,000 increase on top of the 4% for $46.7 million. Department of Human Services, $3,000 increase on top of the 4% for an additional $4.6 million. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection, $1.2 million for $2,000 on top of the 3% for our food protection in sectors.
And increased funding for school safety.
The Senate proposal meets the House and the governor's proposal by adding $103.9 million to establish school safety security grants, and adds an additional $5 million at the request of our lieutenant governor to make sure that school safety is a priority.
Let's give you some highlights from this bill. More than $200 million extra would go to school districts to pay for transportation needs to getting kids to and from school. Something local officials have requested for years, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And more than $100 million would go to schools for security upgrades, a lot of that necessitated by the fact that this is a very gun-friendly state, and we are letting our kids and teachers and administrators be sitting ducks. The Senate added $5 million to security upgrades to start paying for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones' proposal to offer public school teachers a $10,000 annual stipend to take voluntary firearms courses and carry guns in schools. Not at all unsettling, because none of us can quite remember ever having some teachers in elementary, middle, or high school who we thought were a touch crazy, right? Let's see. James Salzer at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting that both chambers, the Senate and the House, backing hundreds of millions of dollars more for Medicaid, the state federal health care program for the poor and disabled, including big money to increase payments to some medical providers. However, because of the Pathways program sort of gumming up the process for folks to opt in, how much that money will actually be spent is yet to be seen. And remember, we're going to give it one more year before we join the other 40 states who have opted into full Medicaid expansion. Oh, by the way, Dr. Michelle Au going off on that on her social media yesterday. Let me share that with you.
So let me say first that I am so disappointed to have to speak on this topic today, on the cusp of our last day of the 2024 legislative session, about how, once again, Georgia Republicans have denied patients the care and protection that they deserve. So as a practicing physician and as a lawmaker, I cannot fathom the degree of moral cowardice and political self-interest that continues to drive Republicans away from doing what is right. I think we are all the sum total of the choices that we make. And this session, yet again, Georgia Republicans chose to look at patients in need with an obvious solution in reach, and they chose to do nothing. At the end of session, each of us has to go back to our districts, and each of us has to go back to our regular jobs. I will have to return to the hospital to care for patients who need our help. Many of them will have health insurance, but some of them do not. Not having health insurance, of course, does not mean they do not require health care. All it means is that the health care they receive will be delayed, It means that they will be sicker by the time they get to me. It means they will have more comorbidities. And it means that they will have poorer outcomes. And they will not be able to afford the care that they, nonetheless, cannot avoid. Tell me how I'm supposed to explain it to them. Why, as a legislature, we once again chose to ignore them. Tell me how to explain to them that our Republican majority legislature wants them to delay receiving care for cancer, heart disease, COPD, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, hypertension, mental health conditions, and medical emergencies for at least another year, because the more important thing than taking care of patients and taking care of families is to avoid embarrassing Governor Kemp. And the worst of it is that Republicans actually know better, right? Over the past few months, I've had so many conversations, as have everyone on this call, with our Republican colleagues, dozens and dozens of Republican members who have told me privately and publicly that they recognize unavoidably that full Medicaid expansion must be the way forward for our state. And that while they now find themselves fighting in a partisan monster of their own creation, it is unavoidable to anyone with any sort of moral core to see that this can no longer be a partisan issue, but a practical, fiscally responsible, ethically clear inevitability. How they can know this and still be able to walk away from this hope, this expectation that we've built up and say, well, maybe we'll try again next year. That is beyond my comprehension. Because some of those waiting for healthcare coverage might not have a next year to wait for.
Exactly.
And frankly, some of us might not have a next year either. Every single day we spend in the legislature, we see people making the calculation about how to gain and hold on to the majority. It's no mystery that this has had a huge effect on our Republican majority's abandonment of uninsured Georgians, as every decision they make seems to be weighed against its enhancement or detraction from that majority hold on power. But what is the point of having that power if you cannot use it for such a clear and powerful good? You ran for office. You chose to lead. Why are you still so afraid? What are you waiting for? You fight to hold on to the majority so that you have the ability to act. You hold on to the majority so that you have the power to do what you think is right. And if you cannot do that, please consider why you deserve to hold that majority at all.
And listen, I'll let you behind the curtain a little bit. For those who don't know Dr. Al or follow her on social media, this is a very agreeable woman. She's no nonsense. She's very common sense. She sees things as they are. She takes facts. She takes logic. She takes data. She comes up with her positioning. She legislates from that sensible point of view, but she's also very congenial with those across the aisle. She is a big-time proponent of donating blood, and she needles, pun intended, I guess, she needles her other legislators to do the very same thing. She commends them when they do. She gets along with just about anybody that she's ever worked with, and yet that stern language tells you just how upset she is that, once again, Republicans were loosey with the football, and she got, well, and Democrats and the uninsured in the state of Georgia got Charlie Browned again. Let's get back to GPP's lawmakers and Sarah Callis letting us know what else transpired yesterday inside the Georgia Senate chamber.
More controversial was HB 1104. It was originally written to help student athletes deal with mental health issues, but the Senate changed the bill, combining 4 other contentious Senate school bills.
We covered this at great length last week. This is Senator Clint Dixon from the committee that, quite frankly, Frankenbilled derailed Representative Omari Crawford's HB 1104, which sought to address mental illness within student athletes.
Prohibits schools from teaching sex education before the 6th grade. It also allows for a process for parents to review the materials 2 weeks before each semester starts, and it's an opt-in, not an opt-out. The matter dealing with gender identity and what and no matter what the male would claim his gender identity is currently, it would be based off of his birth certificate. and would not be allowed to play in those girls' sports.
The bill will also mandate that school libraries inform parents about the content of any materials their child checks out. But Democrats pushed back.
This bill creates the biggest safe space of them all. And that is a safe space for a fraction of the public that doesn't want to acknowledge the reality of trans people and LGBTQ people generally. And it says those people never have to confront the existence of those people and what it means. Instead, they can hide behind Georgia state law. And that, my friends, is weak.
Senator Josh McLaurin weighing in there at the end of that clip. It's just, again, breathtaking to note that here we had a House bill introduced by Omari Crawford, which sought to simply create a network of coaches and faculty members, parents, to deal with student athletes who are dealing with not just being students, not just being kids, the mental challenges that come with that, the psychological weight that comes with that, but also being student athletes and all the pressures of competing and balancing school and expectations and injury, even the mental health of those student athletes. Just a well-meaning bill, and Republicans in the Senate, once they had a chance to tinker with this, decided to make it about targeting kids, transgender kids, and putting an extra burden on their mental health plate. It's just particularly galling, particularly sickening. I'm disgusted by it. And yet, that Franken bill passed. Georgia Equality releasing this statement yesterday. Last night, the state Senate passed HB 1104, a bill suddenly amended to ban transgender students from participating in school sports with their classmates and from using the correct school restrooms and locker rooms. The amended bill would also censor school libraries and restrict sex education. The amended bill now moves back to the House. Jeff Graham, executive director of Georgia Equality, said in response, "To single out transgender students in this way is shameful. Every child deserves a quality education and support from their families, teachers, and coaches. Simply put, HB 1104 makes our state schools hostile towards transgender students. If this becomes law, kids could be denied the chance to play on a team, be active, and learn about sportsmanship. Kids will be denied accurate information about their development. Denying transgender students a fair chance to play sports with their classmates or forcing them into restrooms and locker rooms that don't match their gender puts them at increased risk of mental health challenge, harassment, and bullying. Our lawmakers need to stop this dangerous measure." Thank you for listening. This is The Ron Show. Incidentally, if you ever feel like you want to reach out to The Ron Show, got something to say, fine. You're welcome to that 404-919-2725. At Ron Show ATL on your preferred social media platforms. My email address directly if you want to, Ron at ronshowatl.com. Let me get back to last night's GPP lawmaker, Sarah Callis, giving us the information, what was going down under the Gold Dome. We heard a lot about what happened in the Senate. Let's go to the House.
To business. The House overwhelmingly approved SB 132, a moratorium on new mining projects. Democrats supported the bill, but some said they wished the legislature was doing more to protect the Okefenokee swamp.
Many of us feel like putting a mine anywhere within range of that swamp is the wrong thing to do. We are afraid of what it will do to the groundwater. We are afraid of what it will do to the many very special and unique flowers and wildlife and even things I don't like snakes and reptiles and alligators.
That bill has to go back to the Senate for final approval since the House made significant changes.
Let's, by the way, that was Representative Debbie Buckner talking about the snakes and the lizards and the gator. I get it. I'm the same way. But I got to tell you, if you've never made a trip to Okefenokee, if you ever get the opportunity to do one, I did one as a school kid. It's such an incredible piece of ecology that we have right here at our doorstep in South Georgia. Greg Bluestein, Drew Can reporting that the latest last-ditch measure to place short-term restrictions on mining near the Okefenokee Swamp was originally born a year ago as a bill to restrict Chinese nationals from buying vast tracts of Georgia agriculture near military bases. So this was actually backed by Republican State Senator Brandon Beach, a close ally of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. It easily passed the Senate on a party line vote amid pleas by supporters to prevent communist China from buying farmland in Georgia. But the final days of the legislative session are nothing if not full of intrigue, and Beach's bill was transformed, or as Beach would put it, hijacked, by House Speaker John Burns and his allies to become something entirely different. Oh, he doesn't like that when it happens, huh? The measure, Senate Bill 132, would not prevent state environmental authorities from issuing permits to Twin Pine miners for the 582-acre mine at the center of national conservation efforts, but it would pause permitting of new mines that use the same sort of dragline technique that the Alabama company plans to employ to unearth part of the ancient dunes that run along the east side of the swamp, mainly for a compound used in toothpaste and paint. We use something in toothpaste and in paint? I have to check my toothpaste. Some of the mine's opponents have begrudgingly embraced the bill as a step to limit future excavations on the fringes of the Okefenokee Swamp that conservationists say would imperil one of Georgia's natural resources. As we heard, it cleared the House Tuesday by an overwhelming 167-4 margin, with some conservation groups praising it as a solid step. Vote totals can be misleading, though, and even measures with widespread support can face long odds of reaching Governor Brian Kemp's desk. The bill has also been blasted by some environmental groups who say it is short-sighted and does little to protect the swamp. With just one day in the legislative session left, supporters fear the Georgia Senate won't take up the issue. Still reading here from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Greg Bluestein that a key lawmaker is resolved to blocking it on Thursday when lawmakers convene for the last throes of the 40-day session. Back to Sarah Callis at GPB's Lawmakers.
House members also gave final approval to HB 404. That bill requires that landlords keep rental properties in habitable conditions for tenants. HB 404 passed 168-1.
Jill Nolan from the Georgia Recorder reporting on this, that a proposal to increase protection for Georgia's renters is now in the governor's hands. The bill sponsored by Dalton Republican Casey Carpenter. Remember, we've had him on the show. A Republican I kind of like. Anyway, it sailed through the House a year ago before stalling in the Senate. In fact, we had him on about this. The measure fared better in the Senate this year, advancing with only a minor change and finding overwhelming support last week. Under the measure, rental properties must be, quote, fit for human habitation, and security deposits are capped at 2 months' rent. It also requires landlords to give tenants a 3-day grace period after failing to pay rent, and bars them from turning off the air conditioning during an eviction process. Oh, wow. Jill Nolan, by the way, mentioning that Casey Carpenter said that the bill is in response to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's 2022 investigation that showed how the business practices of apartment owners have trapped Atlanta area renters in unsafe and unsanitary conditions. One thing that this article doesn't touch on is how a lot of this bill actually puts the onus on municipalities and counties to define what is livable and sanitary, and, of course, enforcement as well. Okay, back to Sarah Callis at Lawmakers on GPB again.
SB 417, which creates a new criminal charge for detonating a firework near an emergency responder, passed 157-2. And House Minority Leader James Beverly announced his retirement to his colleagues this afternoon.
Y'all are my family. I love you, 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 I love you. And y'all can't change it. You can't rearrange it. It is what it is. Y'all sit down.
So being someone who used to work in radio broadcasting and knows voice artists and voice workers very well, that guy could do it. Him telling you if he's considering something in retirement. So here we are, Sine Die. Mark Neese, Maya Prabhu, Greg Bluestein reporting at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that lawmakers enter the frenetic final day of the legislative session facing critical decisions over consequential measures ranging from the fate of mining near the Okefenokee Swamp, which we touched on, to a long-running fight over sports betting. Will this finally clear a hurdle and become law in the state of Georgia? To new efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. A slate of election year measures aimed at conservatives are also pending, including a revival of a contentious religious freedom measure and new efforts to limit sex education and ban transgender girls from playing high school sports with other girls. Of course, we've been talking about that as well. And lawmakers are poised to vote to cap increases to home assessments and adopt a record $36 billion budget that includes pay hikes that we heard about earlier for roughly 300,000 state, workers, and teachers. The article continues, but sharp rifts remain over other measures during the do or die day. Lawmakers have bickered for weeks over proposals to hike judicial pay and scale back lucrative Georgia incentives that have made the state a haven for the film and TV projects. Also, numerous election-related measures have also stirred up controversy. Lawmakers could vote on new rules governing challenges to voters' eligibility, allow election officials to reduce the number of voting machines. That is just absolutely batshit crazy, if you ask me, especially here in a major city like Atlanta, and criminalize deep fake political ads. And Democrats are hoping for a last-ditch push to extend health care insurance to more Georgians after a Medicaid expansion measure failed to emerge from a gridlocked state Senate committee. The gang at the AJC also points out that plenty of surprise measures and last-minute initiatives also surfaced during the chaotic day, which starts at 10 a.m. and often ends after midnight as lawmakers race to pass dozens of bills with little or no time to vet each one. Sounds like I should just go ahead and schedule a nap here and there so I can keep up with this as we go into the wee hours of tomorrow morning, right? Thank you for listening to The Ron Show on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, or wherever you podcast.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So, if you don't know this about me, I'll tell you now. Not a religious person in the slightest. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. I attended with my then best friend Jeremy. His mom played the piano at the church. Dad was in the choir and a deacon. He and I would sit in the choir, and I don't remember if Jeremy could actually sing all that well. I, however, from grades 5 through 12, played a trumpet in the school bands. So I'd like to, and people tell me when I go do karaoke that I do all right. I'm on, pretty good, not bad. I know my vocal range. I have my sweet spot. I know the songs I can do, and I know the songs I can't. I know the songs I'm capable of. And because I played an instrument, I'm able to hear tone and usually match it. Now, I don't have the gift of, Mariah vocals or anything like that, but I can kind of do it. Anyway, I totally derailed myself there. My point is, I'm not a religious person. As I gotten older, I drew myself more to science and data and facts, and maybe it's the Star Trek too, the Star Trek stuff too. I don't know. I don't know. I'm of this mind that we, for all we know, could be living on a speck of dust in some greater, larger being's living room, and we're just swirling around in the air like dust does in our house, and we're worshiping this person's whose living room we're in. I don't know. I have theories about humanity and deism, and suffice to say, just not a religious person. But it does bother me that those who do adhere to religion, to religious doctrine, those who worship a greater good or a higher sentient being, have their belief, their faith, taken advantage of. And suffice to say, it's always sort of bothered me that those who profess to be Christian and conservative have been, I believe, most of my life been taken advantage of by political machination. And so while it doesn't surprise me that Donald Trump is now hawking a Bible, needing money, as we all know here lately, but it's just, it's sad and comical at the same time. Axios reporting that Trump is now selling Bibles. The presumptive GOP nominee is encouraging supporters to buy the God Bless the USA Bible, which draws inspiration from country singer Lee Greenwood's patriotic anthem, God Bless the USA. Yep, there is GodBlessTheUSABible.com. Licensing Trump's image, the same company, by the way, CIC Ventures LLC, that owns the trademark to the Never Surrender high-top sneaker that they unrolled in February. Do I have audio? Do I have audio of him hawking the Bible?
I'm proud to be partnering with my very good friend Lee Greenwood, who doesn't love his song, God Bless the USA, in connection with promoting the God Bless the USA Bible. This Bible is the King James Version and also includes our Founding Father documents. Yes, the Constitution, which I'm fighting for every single day, very hard, to keep Americans protected. Also, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance are all part of this. God bless the USA Bible, and it's just very important and very important to me. I want to have a lot of people have it. You have to have it for your heart, for your soul. Many of you have never read them and don't know the liberties and rights you have as Americans and how you are being threatened to lose those rights. It's happening all the time. It's a very sad thing that's going on in our country, but we're going to get it turned around. Religion and Christianity are the biggest things missing from this country, and I truly believe that we need to bring them back, and we have to bring them back fast. I think it's one of the biggest problems we have. That's why our country is going haywire. We've lost religion in our country. All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book. This Bible is a reminder that the biggest thing we have to bring back America and to make America great again is our religion. Religion is so important. It's so missing, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back strong, just like our country is going to come back strong. In the end, we do not answer to bureaucrats in Washington. We answer to God in heaven. Christians are under siege. We must protect content that is pro-God. We love God, and we have to protect anything that is pro-God. We must defend God in the public square and not allow the media or the left-wing groups to silence, censor, or discriminate against us. We have to bring Christianity back into our lives and back into what will be again a great nation. Our founding fathers did a tremendous thing when they built America on Judeo-Christian values. Now that foundation is under attack, perhaps as never before. What can we do? Stand up, speak out, and pray that God will bless America again. I'm proud to endorse and encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again. Pray, get educated, get motivated, and stand with me and the legions of Americans asking God to bless our great nation, to bring our great nation back, and to make America great again. I'm proud to partner with Lee in this offering. He's a very special man, both as a talent, but maybe even more so as a human being. He's very, very special. And I think you all should get a copy of God Bless the USA Bible now and help spread our Christian values with others. There you have it. Let's make America pray again. God bless you, and God bless the USA.
The most godless human being to ever hold office in these United States is trying to sell you, well, not you, but sell Americans a $60 Bible. A man who desperately needs money is trying to sell you, well, not you, Americans who buy into him a $60 Bible. So the thing that, here's where it's personal for me. Having any loved one, my former in-laws come to mind, my mother-in-law in particular, religious woman, married to a minister. Would she spend $60 on this Bible? And trust me when I tell you, she has plenty of Bibles, but not this Bible. Listen, in this country, we've always had con artists and grifters going door to door selling crap. I think about Mr. Haney from Green Acres. Always had the next grift, right? For Mr. Douglas, Oliver Wendell Douglas, the smart, savvy city guy who is married to the less savvy, very lovely Lisa Douglas, who would be more susceptible to Mr. Haney's antics and grift. We've always had that in this country. And it predates this country, no doubt about it. But we live in an era now where the grift is running for office, the highest office that he actually once held before. And we have just enough Americans susceptible enough to his con lapping it up. Now, you know, I give Erick Erickson a hard time a lot of the time. Erick Erickson kind of right now teeters on that tightrope in conservative punditry. He was a Ron DeSantis guy, where it's a fait accompli. Trump is the presumptive nominee of the GOP presidential primary. And so he's going to have to sort of support Donald Trump on his airwaves. But Erick Erickson, for all of his ideological faults, is a deeply religious person. And I'm going to play a little clip of some audio that he spliced together, or his people spliced together, that he put on social media yesterday, that sort of spoke to Erick's ideological disgust with the political movement and the religious movement giving Donald Trump not only a pass, but not even trying to minister to the man.
This is the point I'm making, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. I don't hate Donald Trump. Some of you think I do. I don't. I want to hang out with the man in heaven. This is what I hate. That many of the people who surround Donald Trump, who are professed believers, many of whom are pastors, are so unwilling to push the man towards Jesus, lest they sever that relationship. They're perfectly happy to see him go to hell so long as they get what they want in this lifetime. That's what I hate. And this is the perfect week, Holy Week, to talk about this stuff. Donald Trump is surrounded by a bunch of spiritual advisors who claim to be believers in Christ, and I don't see any of them ministering to him. I see them using his clout to fundraise off of him.
Yep.
I see them using him to transactionally get what they want. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ says we're not to be transactional with each other, we're to be relational with each other. And I see a lot of people whose relationship with Donald Trump is 100% transaction. They don't care if he goes to hell so long as they can get something from him.
I'm actually okay if he goes to hell. I mean, I don't believe in hell, but if it exists, that man's got a ticket punched. And then in my inbox just this morning, I get the New York Times, I guess this is the letter. The raunchy Christians are here. Some evangelicals are rejecting modesty and turning toward the risque, a trend accelerated by the Trump era, and a shifting media landscape increasingly dominated by online culture. Yeah, there's a religious culture war going on, and it's within the religious on the right. See, I believe that there's this problem within Republican culture that they understand that they're behind a godless man, and they're trying to grapple with it. They're trying to affix the rules so that it applies to them. They get their pass. I mean, who are you negotiating with here? If you're trying to negotiate with your God all this time, I mean, deep in your heart, you know that God you've been worshiping all this time, he ain't buying your bullshit. His either, for that matter. Remember when John Heilman asked him about his favorite Bible verse?
When I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal.
So again, I think about my ex-mother-in-law, who is a warm and loving woman. She sent me a nice little air freshener scent thing for my car on my birthday last month. We're still not, conjoined by marriage anymore, but lovely woman. And then there's her husband, the minister, who he long ago, I mean, I'm sure, in fact, I'm pretty certain he voted for Donald Trump the first time and then stopped touting him, stopped mentioning any successes that he found. You could just tell he grew quiet. And I talk with my ex-sister-in-law all the time, and we debate about whether or not she firmly believes that he'll show up to vote for just about everybody else that's on the ballot, but can't see himself voting for Donald Trump. That gives me hope, I guess. I know this about him. I know that, if I attended a Sunday school class that he was leading, and he asked me for my favorite Bible verse, and I spewed some nonsense like Trump did to John Heilman, he'd have called me out on it. You haven't read the Bible, have you? Well, it's been a while. See how easy it was for me to just say that? Do you find fault with me for that? Do you think less of me of that? But for some reason, with Donald Trump, everything is a ruse, a grift, a con, a facade. And it tracks. It's just also consistent because we have this belief, or I say we, a lot of Americans have this belief that he is this vision of American success and excess. He is excess, but the success part, NBC bailed him out. The guy had bankrupted 4 companies a grand total of 6 times. And because he was this Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous 80s caricature from those shows and film, and even mentioned in Designing Women once, because there's that filed away in the back of our head, oh yeah, he was the super eccentric rich guy. Well, he really wasn't. He was just a wolf of Wall Street, essentially. NBC bailed him out, said, hey, we need that caricature to headline a TV reality show, and we're going to pay you boatloads of money if it's successful. And it was successful. So he got boatloads of money. And he parlayed that into political prowess and used the office to enrich himself and his family at the same time. But before that, the success, it really wasn't there. Just the same way the religious background isn't there. The belief, the faith, it's not there. And yet he's out here hawking $60 Bibles to people who do have faith in their religion, in their Creator, in the Son of God. And all they're going to do is give that $60 to that man to continue to enable him to avoid prosecution at all costs and to seek elected office so he can further avoid prosecution at all costs. It's just disgusting. It's gross. There's no other way to put it. And by the way, let me just say, back on the Trump Bible thing, I don't find any of this really funny, honestly. Comedians, the late night shows, the pundit, they've all had a good laugh about this. It's comedic because he is the least religious human being on the planet, it would seem, and yet he's out here selling Bibles. It's again, it brings me back to Mr. Haney on Green Acres, a sitcom in the 1960s and 70s. That's the funny. But I want those who might be of a religious persuasion, who may listen to this and may be a Trump backer, understand that, like, there are people laughing about this, and they are laughing at you. I'm not. Because again, I'm kind of grossed out by the whole thing. It hurts my heart. It hurts me. It upsets me, actually, that people are taken advantage of. Anytime people are taken advantage of, it upsets me. This really upsets me. But also because it has ramifications for the rest of us who are not being taken advantage of, because there are those who are coerced into believing that this is a godly man or a vessel of God, even if he's flawed. I hear that a lot. Oh, well, he's flawed, but, sometimes God chooses a vessel for reasons we don't. No, stop. No, sorry, not buying that. So I guess what I'm saying is those ramifications, of course, have political impact. Here we are perilously breathing through another presidential election cycle, and I get it. A lot of folks aren't wild about the incumbent. I can make the argument that they're completely misled, dislodged by from reality by partisan media, but I get it if you're not excited about that. But we're teetering on the brink of going back to this, again, godless person who is hawking Bibles for $60 a pop to help pay his legal fees. And I mean, hello, put that all together. Who also presided over an economic calamity, a public health calamity, and even before then was overseeing an economy that was already in decline, comparable to his predecessor. And never mind the skirmishes we had in the streets, literally civil rights angst, and him calling on the Proud Boys to defend statues of Confederate icons, heroes, I guess. As an American who grew up with these exceptionalistic ideas about our society and our government, our people, and I keep wanting to think, we're smarter than this. And with each day that passes, I question that. And on this, by the way, I mean, this cult-like political behavior, we've got a judge, John Eastman, who's been recommended to be disbarred by an attorney, as an attorney who aided Donald Trump in trying to overturn the 2020 election. We just had this today. Brian K. Pritchard voted 9 times while serving probation for felony forgery charges. Writing bad checks. Brian K. Pritchard, BKP, as he's known, with his own little podcast and video segment each day. This is a former Georgia GOP vice chairman. Mark Neese reporting a judge ruled Wednesday that the Georgia Republican Party's first vice chairman, Brian K. Pritchard, BKP, violated state election laws when he voted 9 times while serving probation for a felony check forgery sentence. Check forgery. Hello, not the voting illegally 9 times, which, by the way, here we are. Voter fraud. There's the voter fraud you're looking for. Can somebody get Jim Jordan on the phone? Check forgery too? Brian K. Pritchard, a conservative talk show host, must pay a $5,000 fine, a relative slap on the wrist, and receive a public reprimand from the state election board. Well, can we put that in a frame and let him hang it? Gee, according to the decision by administrative law judge Lisa Boggs, Pritchard has previously alleged the 2020 presidential election was fraudulent on his show, but now he has been found to have voted illegally. Recounts, court cases, investigations over the last 3.5 years have constantly debunked fraud claims and upheld the 2020 election results, Mark Neese writes. Pritchard has said he didn't do anything wrong and thought he had completed his probation before voting in Georgia, but that didn't convince the judge in the case. But that's the party of righteousness, according to the, air quote, moral majority. That seemingly is neither anymore. All right, let me turn the page because I only have like 2.5 minutes left. I've been talking a lot about Beltline Rail and the mayor's announcement at the State of the City address that 4 new infill stations were going to be built along current MARTA rail lines, which had a lot of folks wondering because he didn't say squat in the State of the City address about Beltline Rail. A lot of folks were thinking, does this mean that MARTA's going to spend money on these stations and not on Beltline Rail? It's been openly asked because, again, the mayor said nothing about Beltline Rail and then let this fester for a couple of days without saying a word. So 3 days ago, Doug Shipman, the Atlanta City Council president, tweeted, "We're long overdue for MARTA transit infill stations. Our city has grown, but our network has lagged behind. This has the opportunity to support both transit access and economic development across our neighborhoods." Understand that, like, I and I'm sure most Beltline Rail proponents, we're not against these infill stations, but not at the expense of Beltline Rail extension. So I responded to his tweet 2 days ago and I said, let's just hope this won't be a diversion of streetcar dollars. Atlanta needs a better, more nimble network between the MARTA rail lines too. To which Shipman, City Council president, responded, according to MARTA CEO testimony today, when was this? Yesterday, at Council Transportation Committee, the infill stations are in addition to Beltline transit, not instead of, which is great news. Not gonna lie, it's just great news that we have the promise of both is fantastic. Now, on that same Twitter thread, Matthew Garbett with Unplanned Atlanta, bringing a little rain. I'm just here to remind everyone that MARTA eliminated construction of 2 of the stations on the Summerhill BRT route due to lack of funds. So tell me one more about these 4 much more expensive infill stations. I know. State of the City addresses, State of the Union addresses, they're more about giving us overarching ideas instead of the actual details. And I don't know, maybe these 4 infills are in a 10-year vision. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out more about that in the coming days. That's going to do it for The Ron Show. Replay today, 5 to 6 p.m. on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com. On demand at ProgressiveVoices.com for you to listen to anytime you want, and via podcast afterwards. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m. Show notes at RonShowATL.com. Have a good one.